Hi, it's Wednesday, 3rd of June, and I am delighted to see you this evening. It's great to be in your homes. Thank you very much for having me and for having Carolyn a little bit later. We're delighted to be able to keep doing this every week, and we just hope that it is continues to be helpful to you. We have some lovely responses, and certainly in our weekly pastoral calls, we love chatting with you, and you seem to be keeping your spirits up, and I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? Our spirits, our hearts, the essence of us. It's so very, very important. I've been thinking this week about memories. I came across, when I was looking through my bookcase, this very, very special Bible, which evokes all kinds of memories for me. It's an authorised version of the Bible. It was given to me by my parents as I was going into training college. And my mum wrote in it, there it is, Hendon 1980, that's where I went into college from, to Richard with love from mum and dad. And then the verse from Proverbs, in all thy ways acknowledge him and he shall direct thy paths. And I've kept this so very, very precious to me, even though maybe I don't always use the authorised version in preaching. This is such a special, special book, and the poetry, of course, of the authorised version is very, very beautiful. So there's a memory. And memories are really, really, really important. I saw on Facebook this week that some schools are doing a COVID-19 scrapbook. They're putting memories and thoughts about this particular time into a time capsule that they're going to bury, so that in the future it can be dug up and people can see what school children were feeling during this very unusual time. Some of you might have seen on Facebook as well that Stephen and Stuart have been putting out some photographs of Regent Hall Core in the past and some of the band programmes, and I mean, it's all history, it's all great stuff to see. We can't live back there, and we wouldn't want to live back there. I certainly wouldn't want to live back there in the 1980s again, but they're so precious to us, and we must sort of honour the memory and honour those that we have loved, that we've known, who've gone in the past, but we cannot live there. And that's what I want to sort of talk about tonight, I think. When we're talking about in times of lockdown, we are remembering, we are thinking back to how stuff was, and we long for some of the good stuff again. We long for some of the happier times, don't we? In fact, my teaching on this coming Sunday morning, when I'm talking on Trinity Sunday, at the very beginning of my talk this Sunday morning, I will be giving an illustration, a memory of mine when I was a little boy, which is not a great memory, so tune in for that, 11 o'clock Sunday, don't you forget. I saw an Australian comedian. He was talking about remembering, and he was very, very funny. He was saying that, in the past, the photographs and the memories and the experiences of our grandparents were so very, very wonderful. He said, my grandfather actually met Charles Lindbergh. The first man to fly from New York to Paris non-stop. That fantastic flight that Charles Lindbergh undertook. He said, and my granddad had a photograph. He said, that's me. And that's Charles Lindbergh. And he said, today, what are we going to be able to show our grandchildren when we get older? Going to show them a photograph, we're going to say, there, that's my breakfast. That's how it is, isn't it? It's a Facebook photography world. And there are some of you who are watching this who have longer memories than this, of course. And I think, to be honest, given the choice of 6 months of COVID-19 as we are and 6 years of World War II, I'd probably take where we are at the moment. But we will remembering what 2020 was like, and we'll be telling our children and our grandchildren and our friends. And so, yes, during this time, we are, of course, making memories without thinking about it. We will remember back to this stuff, but we're making memories, remembering how it's been. So perhaps I can just suggest that we make more consciously positive memories as we slowly appear to be coming out of this time of lockdown. We're coming out of a corporate sense of shock, I think, and spiritually we have to be, as I have said every single week, forgive me, hopeful people. So as we consciously maybe make memories, let's be hopeful and positive about what we can do and who we can be in the future. so that it can be a really exciting thing to make memories for the far future. So in years to come, these are the kind of things that we can say. I decided to read my Bible more intently in the pandemic, and it's made a difference. Or I reconciled with somebody in the pandemic, and it's made a difference. Or I've embraced this whole technological idea, and I've embraced new ideas about worship. I've embraced new ideas about theology because I tapped into a conference where somebody was talking about how the church can be more effective now as it goes forward with a clean slate, if you like. Or I discovered that I'm closer to God in my garden shed than in my lounge, and so I've written about it. Or I've written a diary of encouragement for others. I can look back to that time and say, these are the positive things that I did, a kind of capsule of memory, of positive memory. I've embraced the life of Jesus more than ever before because I've read about the life of Jesus more than ever before. So instead of this time being memories under a cloud, we can think of the good stuff that's come out. And there has been some very good stuff that's come out. I do think that we're more loving, we're more kind, we're more understanding of neighbours, we're more realising that we need one another. Of course, there are parts of the world that need our prayers right now, and I think of the United States with this awful, awful thing that's happened. Black lives really do matter, but every life matters. And we want to support in prayer those people who are fighting for justice, for the marginalised, and justice for those who are hurt. We really do. But within that, let's bring bright, hopeful, positive, Christ-centred messages to the world. Don't you think that Ali and Beth and our fabulous young people led a beautiful Sunday last week, Pentecost Sunday, the birthday of the church? I thought it was great. And I want to bring to you a quote that links with that, but also links with what I've been saying in conclusion of my bit. Anyway, here's a quote. It says, "Without Pentecost, the Christ event, the life, death and resurrection of Jesus, remains imprisoned in history as something to remember, to think about and reflect on only." So, like a story. But he says the Spirit of Jesus comes to dwell within us so that we can become living Christs here and now. So treasure the memory, but do the positive thing. Live in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, and that's on renewal. Somebody once said that Christmas is Christ with us, Easter is Christ for us, and Pentecost is Christ in us. Our faith holds precious memories, but it's not an archive. It's a living word, it's a living thing. May that be so. May that be something we take with us through this period of time right now that we're living in. It's an active living experience for the here and now, but certainly for the future. Let us pass that on. Why don't we do that? God bless you. Great to be with you. Don't forget that on Sunday, it's Trinity Sunday. So that's 11 o'clock, Regent Hall, YouTube. And then next Wednesday, we're all charging round to Ali's for coffee and a cake. And Ali's going to lead our midweek conversation next week. So that'll be great. I'm going to play a piece of music now, a really short piece. So I'm going to play it twice. It's called "It Was a Very Good Year." And I'll just bring to you the words of this. I should have had this ready. But here it is. Here are the words. He says, "When I was 17, it was a very good year. Second verse, when I was 21, it was a very good year. Third verse, when I was 35, it was a very good year." And then he's looking back on it as an older person. And he says, "But now the days are short. I'm in the autumn of the year. And now I think of my life as vintage wine from fine old kegs. From the brim to the dregs, it poured sweet and clear. It was a very good year." In other words, my life from top to bottom, through all the ups and downs, all my romances, all my hurts, all my pains, all my drops, all my failures. Actually, I can look back on it now and I can say, It was a very good life. It's a short song, just going to play two short verses, made famous by Frank Sinatra. It was a very good year. Here we go.
Well, I wonder when lockdown is really over at last, what will be the thing that you most remember about this time? I've got this little theory that what we remember most is what we experience most intensely at the time. So the deeper our experience, the more intense our experience of something, the more firmly that particular event or experience is planted into our memories. Whether that's a good memory or a bad memory, of course, it can go either way. So, for example, one of the things that I think about a lot at the moment is hugging our grandchildren, and I miss it terribly, or missing our kids, giving them a hug. We have been fortunate enough with the easing of lockdown to just be able to see them, but the agony of not being able to hug them is huge. And I think it's because the memories of being able to do that are so intense, the intense joy, the comfort they bring, the skin on skin, the closeness is so intense that the memory of that creates pain for us now that it can't happen. But memory is an amazing thing, isn't it? I once remember hearing the great Eric Ball, that spiritual master as well as musician, talk from a platform about the power of memory. He was into this subject of memory, and I remember I was only in my 20s, but it stuck with me, how memory is like a door into a reliving of that event that we're remembering, that thing, with all our senses. So as we remember, so our senses come to life. Our sounds, our smells, our touch, our taste, our vision. And that actually it's a way of re-entering the past in a way that the past relives itself for us. It's a door that opens up to us. So, for example, when Rich and I walk round the gardens over the road that we've spoken about, if we go in an evening, you get the smell of the flowers as you go along this very shaded part. And every night we come to that. As we go past it, Richard finds himself back in South Africa as a teenager with his parents, because that particular smell of that particular plant was very much part of his South African experience. So he remembers, he relives through smell that it all comes back to life. His mum, his dad, his sister out there in those years. It's an amazing thing. Of course, it is about good and bad memories. And we sometimes want to forget the painful experiences of our lives, and that's not a bad thing. But in the Bible there's this really strong call to remember ourselves by remembering God's goodness. So in Isaiah 46 verse 9 he says, "Remember the things I've done in the past, for I am God alone." Remember that. Psalm 105, remember the wonders he has done, his marvels and the judgments he pronounced. Remember those things. Deuteronomy, remember how the Lord God led you all the way. This is what I want you to know in your heart, says Deuteronomy, that the Lord your God who guided you then will guide you today. Hebrews chapter 11, a whole chapter is dedicated on how we should have confident faith, because we can remember in the past how others held confidence in God. Abel and Cain, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah. Remember this heritage, says the writer of Hebrews. Remember that. Don't forget it. Don't forget what the Lord your God has done. So let's remember in this time God's goodness, God's guidance, God's protection on us. And whilst we can't hug our grandchildren, let's remember those sounds and sights and smells and touches and tastes that make it so bittersweet in a way now, with a promise of what yet still to come. Let's pray our prayers this evening. Lord, in our isolation, remind us of your nearness. In our anxiety, remind us of your peace. In our confusion, remind us of your promises. In our fear, remind us of your presence. In our prayers, remind us that you hear. In our pain, remind us of your comfort. And in our loss, remind us of your compassion. May you know the hope that comes from knowing God is your stronghold. May you remember that with God, you can face the future with a hopeful heart, a steady eye, and a posture of peace. God is faithful. Good night and amen.